Welcome back to the Gold IRA Blueprint Podcast, everyone. Today we're diving deep into something that can be a real game changer for folks, nearing retirement or already enjoying those golden years, especially if you're facing, the curveball of divorce. We're talking about how gold IRAs can really step up and help you secure your financial footing, during those tricky times.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Planning for retirement, it's a bit of a balancing act anyway, right? But toss in a divorce and suddenly you're walking a tightrope, especially when it comes to your finances.
It's like the ground shifts beneath you. All those savings, all that careful planning, it all becomes, a bit of a scramble.
Exactly. And that's where these gold IRAs are really starting to make waves. They're not just about diversifying your portfolio, spreading the risk, but they also bring a sense of stability when things feel anything but stable.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's make sure everyone's on the same page. Could you break down what a gold IRA actually is and how it's different from like a regular IRA?
Sure thing. Think of it like this: a gold IRA. It's a special kind of IRA, an individual retirement account. It's a lot like the traditional ones, but there's a twist. Instead of putting your money into stocks or bonds, you're investing in something a little more, well, tangible, actual physical gold.
Okay, so instead of riding the roller coaster of the stock market, you're putting your money into something, that you can actually hold in your hand.
Precisely, and that's a big part of the appeal, especially for folks going through a divorce. It's about knowing that at least some of your savings are safe and sound, no matter what the market throws your way.
I can definitely see how that peace of mind would be priceless during a divorce. It's like, taking a deep breath and saying, okay, at least this part of my future is secure.
Exactly. That feeling of security, it's empowering. It lets you focus on the other parts of the divorce, the emotional stuff, the logistics, without that constant worry about your nest egg shrinking overnight.
And speaking of feeling empowered, I want to remind our listeners about something really valuable we offer. If you head over to goldirablueprint.com/exclusive, you can get your hands on a completely free checklist to help you pick the right gold IRA company. It's packed with tips and things to consider to make sure you're teaming up with a company you can trust.
That checklist, it's like a roadmap, It can really help you navigate the process, especially if you're new to gold IRAs and feeling a bit lost.
Okay, so we've established that gold IRAs can offer some serious peace of mind and stability, especially during a divorce. But what are the real tangible benefits they bring to the table? What makes them stand out, especially in these situations?
One of the biggest advantages is how they act as a hedge against inflation. You know how prices keep going up, and your dollar doesn't buy as much as it used to.
Yeah, it's like death and taxes. Inflation always seems to be lurking around the corner.
Right. But gold, well, gold has this knack for holding its value even when everything else feels shaky. It's like a shield, protecting your savings from slowly but surely losing their purchasing power.
So it's a way of ensuring that those hard-earned savings, those nest eggs, actually maintain their real value over time, right?
Absolutely. And this becomes even more important when you factor in the financial complexities of divorce. You're splitting assets, maybe dealing with legal fees, adjusting to a whole new financial reality. Protecting your savings from being eroded by inflation becomes a top priority.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's the whole issue of market volatility. We all know how unpredictable the stock market can be, especially these days. How do gold IRAs play into that?
Well, unlike stocks and bonds, which can swing wildly up and down, gold tends to hold steady, especially when the market takes a dip. Historically, it's been the go-to safe haven asset, something people turn to when they need stability amidst all the chaos.
It's like that solid rock you cling to when the waves are crashing around you.
You got it. And that stability, that feeling of having something solid to rely on, can be incredibly valuable during a divorce when everything else feels up in the air. It's one less thing to worry about.
So we've got inflation protection, a buffer against market swings.
Hmm.
What else makes gold IRAs so appealing, especially when you're dividing things up in a divorce settlement?
Well, they're surprisingly flexible. Traditional retirement accounts, like your 401k, they can be a real headache to untangle during a divorce. But a gold IRA, because it's backed by, actual gold, it makes things a lot simpler. Gold, it's easy to sell or even physically divide if you need to. It just makes for a more straightforward, equitable settlement.
It's like having an asset that you can split cleanly without getting bogged down in complicated valuations or market fluctuations.
Exactly. And that simplicity, that lack of drama, it can be a huge relief for couples going through a divorce. It helps keep things amicable, lets them focus on reaching a fair agreement without unnecessary financial baggage.
So just to recap, gold IRAs, they offer potential protection from inflation, a way to ride out market storms, and they're flexible when it comes to dividing assets. All big wins, especially during a divorce. But let's address the elephant in the room here. Some folks might be thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but aren't gold IRAs super complicated to set up and manage? What would you say to those folks who are, well, maybe a little intimidated by the whole thing?
It's a fair question, and I get why some people hesitate. Gold, it can seem like a mysterious world, right? But honestly, gold IRAs are more straightforward than you might think, especially if you have the right partner, a reputable custodian who knows the ropes. Remember that checklist we mentioned? That's a great place to start.
Right. goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. Download that checklist, folks. It'll save you a lot of headaches. Okay, so let's say we found a custodian we trust. What are the steps involved in actually setting up a gold IRA?
First things first, you got to pick the kind of gold you want to invest in. There are a few options, each with its quirks. The most common are gold bullion bars, those are the big ones you see in movies, and gold bullion coins, those are minted by governments and have a specific weight and purity.
Ah, so we're talking about the real deal, the classic gold you see in those heist movies.
Exactly. Those are the kinds of gold that are perfect for gold IRAs. They're recognized worldwide, easy to trade, and their value is directly tied to the market price of gold.
So no collectible coins or anything like that. It's all about that pure, easily tradable gold bullion.
That's right. When it comes to a gold IRA, you want the kind of gold that's recognized and valued consistently on a global scale.
Makes sense. So we've got our gold picked out. We've got a trustworthy custodian by our side. What's next?
Next up is funding your gold IRA. You can transfer money directly from an existing retirement account, like a 401k, or a traditional IRA that's called a rollover.
So basically, you're moving your retirement savings from one place to another. Only now it's going towards buying that physical gold that'll be held safe and sound within your gold IRA.
Exactly. And rollovers, they're great because they're usually tax deferred. You won't get hit with any penalties for moving your money, and it keeps growing tax-free within your new gold IRA until you decide to withdraw it during retirement.
So it's a smooth, tax-efficient way to diversify those retirement savings and get a piece of that stability that gold offers. Are there any other ways to fund a gold IRA?
You can also make direct contributions to your gold IRA, just like you would with a regular IRA. You contribute pre-tax dollars up to the annual limit set by the IRS. It's a way to steadily build up those gold holdings over time.
It's like adding a layer of gold to your retirement plan, building that solid foundation we talked about.
Exactly. And just like with rollovers, those contributions grow tax-deferred within the gold IRA, giving you the potential for some serious long-term growth.
Okay, this is all starting to make a lot more sense. Setting up a gold IRA, it doesn't seem as daunting as I initially thought.
It really isn't. And remember, you're not in this alone. A good custodian will be there with you every step of the way, making sure you're comfortable with every decision and that everything fits in with your overall retirement goals.
That's reassuring. Okay, so we've covered some important ground here. What a gold IRA is, the benefits, especially for those going through a divorce, and the basics of setting one up. But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. I'm already thinking about potential tax implications, managing a gold IRA effectively, and what other strategies might be helpful, specifically during a divorce.
Those are all great points, and you're right, we've just begun. In our next segment, we'll dive deeper into those topics. We'll look at real-life examples of how gold IRAs have made a difference in divorce settlements. We'll tackle those tax questions, and we'll explore some more strategic approaches to managing these accounts, particularly in a context of divorce.
This is already so insightful. Before we move on, I want to remind our listeners one more time about that free checklist. If you're even considering a gold IRA, even if you're just curious, head over to goldirablueprint.com/exclusive and download it. It's packed with info that can save you a lot of time and potential headaches down the road.
It's a must-have, for sure. Stick around, and we'll be back to explore even more about gold IRAs and how they can help you secure your financial future, even during the ups and downs of divorce. Welcome back. Before we jump into the strategic side of using gold IRAs in divorce settlements, I think it would help to see how they work in the real world.
I'm all for that. Hearing how these accounts actually make a difference in real-life situations, well, makes it all click,
Totally agree. Let's start with a case that really shows the power of protection against market volatility. It involved a couple splitting up their retirement assets. They had a big 401k, mostly invested in the husband's company stock. The wife, she was worried, Having so much tied up in one company felt risky, so she decided to move some of her share into a gold IRA.
Smart move.
Mm,
Company stock, it can be pretty vulnerable, especially if the company hits a rough patch.
right. And in this case, her timing was perfect. Shortly after setting up the gold IRA, the company announced some bad news. Their earnings were down and the stock price, it tanked. But the part she'd put into gold, it stayed pretty steady.
So she was able to go through that divorce settlement feeling a bit more secure, knowing that at least some of her savings were safe from the market crash.
You got it. That gold IRA acted like a buffer, a safety net, keeping a part of her wealth safe during a time that was already tough enough emotionally and financially.
It really highlights why diversification is so important, especially in a divorce. It's like having a backup plan when things go south.
Exactly. Now, let's look at another case, one that really shows the appeal of gold being something tangible, something real. This was a retiree going through a divorce, and they just didn't feel comfortable having all their retirement savings in digital form? They wanted something they could actually see and hold, something that represented their wealth in a concrete way.
Yeah, I get that. It's reassuring, right, to have something physical,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to something as important as your retirement. It's like holding a piece of your financial security in your hand.
Absolutely. For this retiree, that tangible aspect of gold, it brought a sense of comfort, a sense of control. So they took some of their traditional IRA and moved it into a gold IRA, opting for a mix of gold bars and coins.
So they were essentially swapping out paper assets for something with intrinsic value.
Right. And you know what? It gave them peace of mind, more than they expected. They felt more confident, more secure, knowing that a part of their wealth was in something they could actually see and touch.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How investing can be so emotional. It's not just about the numbers, it's about feeling secure and confident in your choices.
Absolutely. That psychological side of investing, it's huge. Feeling like you're in control of your finances, it can make a world of difference, especially when you're going through big changes, like a divorce.
Now, we touched on taxes earlier, but let's dig a little deeper into the potential tax implications of gold IRAs, particularly when it comes to divorce. I think our listeners would appreciate some clarity on that.
You're right, taxes are always a big deal, and even more so during a divorce. The good news is, gold IRAs, just like traditional IRAs, they have tax advantages. Your investments grow tax deferred, meaning you don't owe taxes on the gains until you take the money out during retirement.
So that tax-deferred growth, it's a big plus.
Mm-hmm.
It lets your savings grow without being eaten away by taxes every year. But what happens when those funds have to be divided in a divorce settlement?
That's where it gets a bit tricky. The thing is, taking money out of a gold IRA before you turn 59 and a half, well, you'll usually get hit with a 10% penalty on top of your regular income tax.
Ouch. That's a hefty penalty. So avoiding early withdrawals should be a top priority, right?
Definitely. But there are some exceptions to that penalty, especially when it comes to divorce. And that's where something called a Qualified Domestic Relations Order, or QDRO for short, comes into play.
QDRO sounds pretty official.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is that and how does it work?
A QDRO, it's a legal document from the court, part of the divorce settlement. It lays out exactly how retirement assets, including gold IRAs, should be split between the spouses.
So it's like a legal blueprint for making sure those retirement assets are divided fairly according to what the court decides.
Exactly. And here's the key thing. A QDRO lets you transfer money from a gold IRA to a former spouse without getting hit with that 10% early withdrawal penalty.
Ah, so it's a legal way to protect both parties from those extra taxes when dividing up those retirement assets.
Exactly. If you're going through a divorce and you have a gold IRA or any other retirement accounts that need to be split, talking to a lawyer who specializes in QDROs is absolutely essential. They'll make sure things are done right and that you're protected.
Can't emphasize that enough. Having expert guidance is so important when you're dealing with the legalities and financial complexities of divorce.
Yeah.
So we've talked about taxes, QDROs. What other strategic things should people keep in mind when managing a gold IRA during a divorce?
Well, one of the most important things is understanding how that gold IRA fits into your overall retirement plan and your asset allocation strategy. Diversification is still key, even with gold. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
It's not just about how much gold you have, but how it balances out with your other investments.
Exactly. The ideal amount of gold in your portfolio, it depends on things like your risk tolerance, how long you have until retirement, and your overall financial goals. Many financial advisors suggest having between 5% and 15% of your retirement portfolio in gold. But after a divorce, well, your financial picture can change a lot. So it's important to take a fresh look at your asset allocation and see if you need to make any changes.
So it's not something you set up and just forget about. You need to stay on top of it and make adjustments as your situation evolves.
Exactly. Let's say after your divorce, you decide you need a more conservative approach. Prioritize preserving your capital and having a steady income stream. If your gold IRA has done really well, you might think about selling some of those gold holdings and putting those funds into something more conservative, like bonds or dividend-paying stocks.
You're basically fine-tuning your portfolio to match your new needs and goals.
That's it. Rebalancing is all about keeping the right mix of assets to achieve the level of risk and potential return that you're comfortable with. And it's something you do over time, not just once.
Now, we've talked about diversifying across different types of investments. But what about diversifying within your gold holdings? Is that something people should consider?
Absolutely, that's a great point, and it often gets overlooked. Even within a gold IRA, there are ways to diversify. Remember those different types of gold we talked about? Bars, coins, different mints.
Yeah, you stressed sticking with gold bullion, the ones that are easily recognizable and traded worldwide.
Right. But even within that category, you can diversify. You could hold a mix of American gold eagles, Canadian gold maple leafs, and South African Krugerrands, for example.
So you're spreading your risk even further by holding gold from different countries and mints. But why is that important? Wouldn't all gold bullion be impacted similarly by market trends?
While gold generally tends to move in the same direction, certain types of bullion might do a little better or worse than others in certain situations. Like, imagine there's some political or economic turmoil in one country. Gold coins from that country, they might see a temporary drop in value, while gold from other countries stays more stable.
So it's like having extra insurance, making sure your entire gold portfolio isn't overly dependent on any one source.
Precisely. It's a subtle strategy, but it can make a big difference in terms of stability and minimizing risk within your gold IRA.
This is fascinating. I'm realizing that managing a gold IRA is more strategic and nuanced than I initially thought.
It definitely is, and there's even more to think about. Have you ever considered how a gold IRA might fit into your estate planning?
Estate planning. Honestly, that wasn't the first thing that came to mind when we started talking about gold IRAs. How do they play a role in that?
Well, remember, with a gold IRA, you own physical gold, a real, tangible asset. Unlike traditional assets in a retirement account, which might have to go through probate, physical gold can be passed down more directly to your heirs.
So it can potentially streamline the whole estate planning process and ensure that your loved ones receive their inheritance quicker and with less hassle.
Exactly. And sometimes it can even potentially reduce estate taxes. Of course, the details depend on your individual circumstances and the laws in your state. It's best to talk to an estate planning attorney for specific advice.
Great point. Estate planning is very personal. There's no one solution that fits everyone.
Absolutely. But it's a crucial aspect to think about. And a gold IRA, with its unique structure and the fact that it's backed by a tangible asset, it can offer some interesting advantages when it comes to planning your estate.
This has been an incredibly informative conversation. We've covered so much ground, from the basics of gold IRAs to advanced strategies for managing them during a divorce, and even their potential role in estate planning.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights. I hope our listeners feel empowered to take charge of their financial futures, especially during those times of change and uncertainty.
Before we move on to our final segment, I want to remind our listeners one last time about that free checklist we mentioned. You can find it at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive.
It's a must-have for anyone even thinking about a gold IRA. It's packed with tips to help you choose the right provider, avoid those scams out there, and navigate the whole process with confidence.
Absolutely. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back in just a moment to dive into some even more advanced strategies for managing your gold IRA. Welcome back to the show. We've been deep diving into gold IRAs and how they can be a real lifesaver for those of you navigating, well, the often choppy waters of divorce.
It's been a great conversation, hasn't it? We've covered a lot, from real-life examples to those tricky tax questions and, of course, the importance of having a solid plan.
We can't stress enough how important it is to have a team of trusted advisors in your corner, financial advisors, attorneys who specialize in those QDROs, and, of course, tax professionals. They can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Having those experts on your side, it's like having a safety net. They can guide you through the rough patches and help you make smart decisions to protect your financial future.
Now, I'm really interested in digging into some more advanced strategies for managing a gold IRA, particularly when you're going through a divorce. What are some of the things people should be thinking about as they move forward?
Well, one of the key things to remember is rebalancing. Remember how we talked about diversification being so important? Well, your asset allocation, that's the mix of stocks, bonds, real estate, and gold that you have. It shouldn't stay the same forever.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. You need to be actively managing your portfolio and making adjustments as needed.
Exactly. Life throws curveballs, and divorce is a big one.
Hmm.
It can change your financial goals, how much risk you're comfortable with, and even your timeline for retirement. What might have been a good mix of investments before the divorce might not be the best fit anymore.
So how often should people be reviewing their asset allocation and thinking about rebalancing? Is there like a general rule of thumb?
There's no hard and fast rule, but it's a good idea to review everything at least once a year, or whenever you have a big life change, like a divorce. That's when you take a close look and see if your current mix of assets still makes sense for your goals and your risk tolerance.
And if it's not quite aligned, that's when you might consider rebalancing, right?
Yeah,
Basically, buying or selling assets to get your portfolio back in balance.
exactly. For example, let's say after a divorce, you decide you need to play it a bit safer, protect your capital, and have a steady income. If your gold IRA has grown a lot, you might think about selling some of that gold and putting that money into more conservative investments, like bonds or stocks that pay dividends.
So you're strategically adjusting your portfolio to match your new circumstances and your financial goals.
Precisely. Rebalancing is all about maintaining the right mix of assets to achieve the level of risk and potential return that's right for you. It's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing process.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we've talked a lot about diversifying across different types of investments, but what about diversifying within your gold holdings themselves? Is that something worth considering?
It's a great question. And it's often overlooked. Even within a gold IRA, you can diversify. Remember those different types of gold we talked about? Bars, coins, different mints.
Yeah, you were pretty clear about sticking with gold bullion, the kinds that are universally recognized and easily traded.
Right. But even within bullion, there's room for diversification.
Hmm.
For instance, you could have a mix of American gold eagles, Canadian gold maple leafs, and South African Krugerrands.
So you're spreading your risk even further by having gold from different countries and mints. But why is that so important? Wouldn't all gold bullion be affected in the same way by market forces?
While it's true that gold, as a whole, tends to move in a fairly consistent direction, certain types of bullion might perform a bit differently in specific situations. For example, if there's some political or economic instability in one country, their gold coins might see a temporary dip in value, while gold from other countries stays more stable.
This is like an extra layer of protection, making sure your entire gold investment isn't relying too heavily on any one source.
Exactly. It's a small but potentially important strategy for adding more stability and reducing risk within your gold IRA.
Wow, this is eye-opening. I'm realizing that managing a gold IRA is a lot more involved than I initially realized. It's really about making strategic choices and being proactive.
It definitely is. And there's even more to consider. We've talked about managing a gold IRA during a divorce, but have you ever thought about how it could play a role in estate planning?
Estate planning. To be honest, that's not something I immediately connect with gold IRAs. How do they factor into that?
Well, remember, with a gold IRA, you own physical gold, a tangible asset. Unlike traditional assets in a retirement account, which often have to go through probate court, physical gold can be passed on to your heirs more directly.
So it can potentially simplify the estate planning process and make sure your loved ones receive their inheritance more quickly and efficiently.
Precisely. And in some situations, it might even help reduce estate taxes. Of course, the specific details depend on individual circumstances and the laws in your state, so it's always best to consult with an estate planning attorney.
That makes sense. Estate planning is such a personalized process.
Absolutely. But it's a crucial aspect to consider, and a gold IRA, because of its unique structure and the fact that it's backed by tangible gold, it can offer some interesting advantages when it comes to estate planning.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the basics of gold IRAs to those advanced strategies for managing them, particularly during a divorce, and even their potential role in estate planning.
It's been a pleasure sharing this information. I hope our listeners feel more confident and ready to take control of their financial futures, especially during those challenging times.
Absolutely. Before we sign off, I want to remind our listeners one last time about that free checklist we've been talking about. It's available at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. Don't miss out on this valuable resource.
It's packed with tips and insights that can really make a difference. It'll help you choose the right gold IRA provider, avoid those scams that are out there, and navigate the whole process smoothly.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into gold IRAs and how they can play a crucial role, especially during those major life transitions. And remember, no matter what life throws your way, securing your golden years is within your reach. Stay informed, seek out expert advice when you need it, and keep investing in your future. Until next time.